Have you done a podcast before? I was trying to find one.
So I have.
Here, choke him on the mic. Otherwise, yeah.
It's been a while. I've done a few maybe 4 years ago, and podcasts were just becoming a thing. So I'm excited to be here.
Dude, this is unbelievable. I was trying to find one. I was like, I found there's a video of you online doing an interview.
Yeah. So I actually helped start another podcast several years ago and have some podcast clients. So it's fun to be on the other side.
When you have a podcast client, was that like you've done deals for them with like podcast networks or things like that?
Yeah. So I had various distributors of podcasts like Cumulus and things like that. I've done some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I didn't realize this because you sent me your bio and I was looking over it, and sometimes it's hard to know like what lawyers are up to because there's a lot of confidentiality things. But I didn't realize that this deal you did with Warren Ziders was like one of the largest deals in country music for a new artist.
It's been insane. I think that, as you know, the TikTok whole short form video content, social media stuff has gone nuts. And so he was really found this sweet spot where he was creating a ton of content and building so much leverage for himself. He ran off a clip of like something like 90 days where he was streamed 1 million streams a day, which is just bonkers numbers. And so it was perfect storm, and really on the hills. He's label mates with Zach Bryan, who also has significant success leveraging the platform. And so it was a really cool thing, and it came together. His manager, Charlie Salvatore, and I just kind of worked that and saw the process out. And I think there's no way to verify what the biggest deal ever was because of client confidentiality, but I've never heard of a deal for an intro artist in Nashville that size. So
whose deal was done first? Bailey's, Warren Ziders' deal, or Zach Bryan's deal?
Yeah, Zach has been with Warner Records for 2 or 3 years before Warren's deal. So
do you think that they were seeing like great success with an artist kind of in the country space, and that's what was appealing about Warren?
The bigger conversation too is the interesting dynamics between Nashville country labels and then the interjection and influence now of labels outside of Nashville feeling like they can get in the country game, and finding out what that sometimes it's even within their own company system, like Warner Records. Obviously we have a powerful Warner Nashville shop here, and so those dynamics of finding collaboration points and working things. But I would say that outside of Nashville, whenever they get a country artist right now, for better or worse, they just kind of let them do whatever they want, and it's a lot of times unconventional. They'll put out tons of releases, put out like cover recordings, re-record them, re-release things 2 or 3 times in different versions, and you see success with Warren, but also Zach Bryan and Bailey and some of the other guys that are coming. Just
even like Megan Maroney, her deals with Columbia, New York, and then they did the deal with Sony, which I think it's like a trend that's happening right now. It's like is that because when you go out you get bigger advances? Like, why are people?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know this to be true, but my sense is that when the leverage gets to a certain point, it's all in the numbers, right, with streaming. So once it's really hard. For example, if you have really high streaming numbers and you're putting it out through TuneCore, then you're getting a check for 6 figures monthly if you're streaming at a high clip. Well, that's really hard to compete with for a Nashville record label, even a major, because a baby deal, what I would call it, would be probably close to what someone that is streaming high numbers are getting paid monthly. So why would they
don't
walk
need the
in?
advance, and then they're gonna
yeah. And so, big picture, the pop space is built for that infrastructure in New York and LA. So now that's why you see a lot of these country artists coming backdooring their way into Nashville deals through bigger imprints, because they don't flinch at a larger advance because they have the data. They're really very data driven outside of Nashville, less on gut instinct A&R, more on they pull the reports kind of like Moneyball, and look at the numbers and then kind of say, how much is this going to make over X amount of time? This is what we can afford. And so they kind of bootstrap it. That's my impression anyway.
Right. So when you did the Warren Ziders deal, I guess, did you have a relationship with Charlie, or how'd you get in originally with him?
Yeah, I met Charlie through some other artists a little bit before. He's really super like motivated entrepreneur, going back several years, been in town grinding. A lot of the guys kind of around my age. I'm around 40, and we've all been here for over a decade, just kind of cutting our teeth.
You've
And
put your
meeting
10 years
people.
into the 10-year town.
We did. We
Yeah.
did. So I mean, like they say, it's a 10-year town for songwriters and artists. It's no different for industry professionals. You know, I came here in 2011, and just in 2022 was made Billboard Top Music Attorney list. So that was exactly right on the button. 10 years.
Oh, no way. Wait, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, wait, so you come here, so you meet Charlie, and then what I'm curious about is, like, you do this deal with Warner
Yes.
for Warren Zeiders, or just any deal. Like, originally, like, how does it start out? Does the label send you an original, a first draft
Sure.
of what a deal is, and then do you, like, go and start redlining and say, no, or was the first deal, like, pretty close to what it looked like? Maybe not even for Warren specifically, if you can't talk about it, just, like, in general. Is it... How's the flow typically work?
So, just to back up a little bit, you really have now, about 5 entrances into becoming an artist in not just country, but any genre. So, obviously, it starts first with the music. Obviously, you have to be talented, have to have good music. But the 5 kind of entrances are you're performing phenomenally live and drawing big numbers. That's one. The second is social media presence. That can be TikTok, Instagram, whatever. The third is kind of what I call the buddy system, where you're super talented already, but you have some type of in. Like you see this with Cole Swindell and Luke Bryan. He was on the road with him, and kind of you leverage that connection. Then you have a more reality show type of entrance, which allows you to bypass. And then you have the Nashville, also common in LA producer world, like you come up as a songwriter and have some hits as a songwriter first, and that gives you the credibility to shift over to artist. So those are the 5. So if you collect more than one of those 5, that only increases your leverage. So like for Warren, he was on the social media following path and very successful at leveraging his TikTok fame into building a bridge to streaming platforms. But if you can be TikTok famous but not put any music out, and it doesn't work. You have to be able to build the bridge. And so he was very successful in doing that. Whereas another artist like Luke Combs, when 1,200 people were showing up for a 200-person venue in Asheville, North Carolina,
that was enough.
Yeah, it gets people's attention. He followed the live performance route there. And so in contract negotiation, it's all about leverage. It's a leverage game. So we try to look at what the strengths are of the artist, or I'll also work with songwriters and producers, and leverage is similar across the board, but look at what your strengths are, look at what you have going on so far, and leverage that into a deal. Sometimes in the case of Warren, you create enough leverage, they're reaching out to you, but that's not always the case. Sometimes we'll self-identify just like any other A&R person would, like a really talented artist, songwriter, producer, and try to make some connections for them, make some introductions. I'd say maybe 20 years ago in Los Angeles, all the attorneys were the deal makers. And that's kind of what my model is. It's a little bit different than the traditional Nashville model, but I love doing deals. It's kind of my bread and butter. And people ask me what my hobbies are, and I'm like, outside of my kids and family, I just love doing deals. So
that's when you go into a deal with an artist like Warren, how much of that deal do you have a sense going in, knowing where the artist is in terms of social numbers and the leverage that you're bringing to the table? How much of a sense do you feel like you sort of know what the deal is going to look like and it's black and white, versus how much do you feel like this is a blank slate and let's be creative about this deal and figure it out? Is it more black and white, or do you feel like you're able to get in the weeds and be creative about how the deal can actually be structured?
I mean, Warren specifically was an anomaly. It kind of had a life of its own in the negotiation process because so many people were coming to the table. But especially songwriter producers, depending on where they are in their career, I have a general sense of what's going on in the market here and in LA, and can kind of peg where I want it to land. And then we will shop out, and depending on if this is their first deal or if this is their second deal or third deal, kind of know what their market value is and able to land it within certain parameters. But no one deal's the same. and it also depends on what the personal needs of the client are, because have some songwriters and producers that don't have a very high cost of living, so they would rather have more ownership in their copyrights in the long term, so they'll take less money as an advance and in exchange for greater ownership, versus others may have families or big mortgage or something they're trying to pay off, and will take more money up front and have less ownership on the back end, if that makes sense.
Right. How aggressive can you be with a major when you're negotiating a deal with an artist? Is most of the negotiation done redlining the contract and back and forth, or are you often on the phone with their legal and going back and forth? And does it get aggressive, or does it stay pretty cordial?
Yeah, it's pretty cordial, I would say, with business affairs of any of the majors, or any deals as far as publishing company if they have in-house business affairs, because obviously I'm not incentivized to tick anybody off and then have to come back to the table on another deal and do that. But I will say that it really is a leverage thing, depending on how many offers are at the table, what the artist preferences are. But it's a very competitive arena, the music lawyering, I would say, and so I'm super competitive myself, and there are a lot of times where we have very difficult negotiations, and that's one of what I think is really enjoyable for me. Maybe not for all personalities, but
yeah,
I love it.
Artist rights is definitely a big topic right now, just in music media. Have you seen, in the 10 years that you've been in Nashville, have the deals, does it feel like they've started to become more in the favor of the artist, or have they changed in 10 years to be better for the artist, or do you feel like in reality the deals are pretty much the same that they were 10 years ago?
Well, I think these had kind of a bell curve. The deals maybe 15, 20 years ago were more artist friendly. A lot of money flowing into the pockets of artists.
You think they were more friendly
20 years ago?
20 years ago. Okay, yeah.
And then we went through a period where the kind of invention or inclusion of 360 rights kind of came,
right.
And now I think we're on the backside of that coming down. The deals are becoming a little more friendly again. I think it's because of the short form video exploitation and artists really being able to build a little of that leverage that I'm talking about on the front end before walking in. Because if a label finds someone fresh, like no exposure, no anything, they believe in them, they see talent, but there's nothing going on, then they can they have the leverage, right? They can give them a worse deal on worse terms that's more favorable to the label, not to the artist, which, if Universal or Sony shows up at your door and you posted on TikTok like 4 times and you don't have any songs out and say they're going to give you a record deal, you're going to take your record deal,
Yeah.
But because there's so much access, so much more access now, I think artists are able to create that leverage on the front end, and they can do the math once they see what they're making and figure out whether something's good or not.
Do you see, because I can point to like a handful of artists in town that have massive social followings. Some of them are even touring and selling lots of tickets, and they say that they can't find the right record deal, which I'm inclined to believe. But you see what these deals actually are. I'm sure you can think of a couple of these people as well who are touring, playing theaters, playing clubs, putting out music completely independent, doing it on their own, maybe with like a distributor. You know what the deals are because you look at so many of them. Do you feel like that's right, that the right deal hasn't found them yet, or it's not out there? Or do you think that at that, if you're in that position, are you choosing to not sign a record deal and saying, hey, we're going to go this alone? Or is it sometimes hard to find the right deal for the right artist in that case?
I think it's a combination of, just because they're not signed to a record deal, independent doesn't always mean you don't have a team.
Right.
And so you may also have a manager or an agent that's bringing stuff to you. And so I think it's a matter of, if like in an instance of a high streaming artist, they're making a decent amount of money just through their TuneCore or CD Baby or small distribution partner. So they're less willing to give up. When you're poor, you'll do what you can to get the money, the paycheck. But if you're already have money, the first step in making it as a musician in the industry is supporting yourself, having a living wage. And if you have that plus a little sum, then you're less worried about going into a long-term arrangement with a company because you might lose rights, might lose control of the creative product and things like that. So I think finding the right deal is an easy way to say I'm already making more money probably than they would offer me. So they're either going to have to raise their price or
Right.
leave me with some of my rights or give me a compelling reason, marketing plan, access to radio, things like that I can't already achieve on my own. Because that's really the purpose of a major now is there nobody really has access to country radio in the country space or even pop radio in the pop space because it costs millions of dollars to take an artist to radio. So that's if you want to be on radio, you're going to have to sign with a label pretty much.
Right. Okay, before we move on from this, any good negotiation tactics that you use in your life that maybe anyone can use in their life? Do you have any like go-tos or any strategies or any things that you've just read in books that are just like, school?
Yeah.
That's what you do to negotiate.
I mean, I try really hard to not negotiate against myself.
How do you not do that? Or what does that mean?
And so whether it's I kind of refuse or avoid throwing out my deal points in advance when I meet with the client and assess their situation, know what kind of leverage they have, know what the market is. We'll set a range behind the scenes of kind of I think this is where it'll land, but we'll collect first offers and let a lot of labels will even ask the writer or the publisher or the producer or the artist like, what are you looking for? And I always coach them to say, I'm looking for a place that gets me creatively, that has a good culture.
Don't say a number, basically.
Exactly.
Do you think they're asking that because they want them to make the first move?
Oh, yeah.
100%, right?
100%.
Because they want them to say, I'm looking for 30,000 or whatever the number is.
Like,
and
I
then
really need $30,000 to pay my bills, and that's what I'm most concerned about right now. Don't ever say that.
Right. Yeah.
Just, leave that to your attorneys or reps. But that's kind of, first things first, never negotiate against yourself. Even when you're getting comments back that are general from the other side, like we can't do this number, then I would never come back and say, well, what about this number? I would just say, well, tell me what you're proposing.
Yeah. What's the thing? Because I was negotiating a deal for something, big sponsorship opportunity.
Yeah.
And I said to them, what was your budget? And they said to me, well, what are you looking for? And I said, well, when you give me your budget, I can put the best package together for you. And they said, well, we'd love to see the package. Like they knew, we were both on the same page about what we were doing.
Yeah.
And then eventually I gave a high number to what I thought because I was like, this isn't going anywhere. So I felt like I had to give a high number to keep the conversation moving. They came back and we sort of met in the middle. But sometimes it's really hard because like I feel like people both know this game if you're dealing with smart negotiators. So, like, where do you go from there? At some point, someone has to give in, right?
My first step, or second step in that negotiation is to go with the humor route and just be like, whatever you're thinking, double it. No.
but do you say that? Is that a real line that you say?
I will say it.
You will? Yeah.
I will say it. But, I mean, usually, again, with market experience, this is why it's really important for artist, songwriter, producers to have an attorney that is doing this day in and day out because I can ballpark what it looks like, and I would just revert to, well, these are similar deals that I've done lately, and this is where it landed. And probably shoot a little over that because at the end of the day, we're all playing in the same pool here, whether it's here or LA, and so people know kind of what people get. But the important thing is, for me personally, I only want to take as much money in an advance to make sure not just the artist or songwriter is comfortable financially, but maybe a little bit more than that so that they're being able to get the few nice things that they want if they're in a leverage position. But the biggest thing is the rights, grabbing as most of the rights on the back end as possible. If you create some leverage in the middle of your deal right now, I'm doing renegotiating deals that are in the middle of the term, not at a renegotiation point, but the writers or artists have leverage because of sudden popularity, and so we're already renegotiating their deals to try to capitalize on that leverage moving forward.
What do you bring to the table when you do that? Because that's something that always makes my head spin is like, yes, you might have leverage, but you're in a deal. So what do you negotiate? You try to give something else to get something else? Like, how's that work?
Right. We would just give an example of a songwriter that all of a sudden, has several number ones, but they're still in their first deal, meaning it's very terms that aren't as favorable to them. We would just say, hey, we're going to give you a couple more years, and in exchange we hope that you'll give us more ownership in the back catalog because we all want to win together. It's a good relationship. Let's just keep it going for the long run. situation like that. And most of the times, the publishers or the label will see that value and really recognize that as a long-term investment opportunity on both sides.
Among the publishers in town in LA, definitely you have majors, you have major indies. Without giving any names, are there some that you get super excited to negotiate with because it's going to be a good process? And are there others where you go, oh God, this is going to be tough. I know that person. That's a hard ass. Or across the major players, do you think people are overall pretty fair?
So I think that companies that have in-house business affairs folks, like in-house legal, always easier to negotiate with than companies that typically the smaller companies like independent publishers or independent record labels will have like a outside general counsel, which is like me, someone at a law firm. And I'm on the other side representing independent publishers, independent labels as well. That's a more difficult conversation because we're usually the ones being strategic and aggressive on our side. So when you pit two aggressive attorneys with each other, negotiating, who have seen a wide variety of deals from multiple companies, it can be a very difficult to get the deal done. When you're working with like someone that is in-house counsel in the majors, they only see the deals that their company does. They're not worried about what Sony or Universal, they're not worried about the other companies. They're just, these are the types of deals we do. This is our form. These are the points that are negotiable. These are not, and so really on those, we're only talking about money and ownership. That's really the only variables. But when you're dealing with another independent outside counsel that's representing an independent company, you're not just talking about the material, money, and points. You're talking about really a lot of times the structure of the deal, like this provision is written incorrectly, because I'm experiencing this and you guys need to rewrite this whole section and you left out words here. It's more in-depth, like kind of intellectual attorney arguing involved versus dealing with the internal business affairs.
So whenever you're like, oh, that company has internal business affairs, you take a breath or whatever.
No
you
doubt.
say this is
No
going
doubt.
into it. This is probably gonna be a little bit of a more, I don't know, an easier experience.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's super competitive. And if you're an attorney that's an outside counsel, kind of independent, like you're in a different law firm, then you also have artist, songwriter, producer clients in addition to your company clients. And so we're all doing deals with each other, and we're highly motivated and highly competitive and going after the same type of clients. So it's a very interesting. It's not for the weak.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It is not.
This is so in your bio. I mean, one of the things that was like super impressive last year, it says you did $20 million worth of deals, which seems like a very impressive number. As a lawyer, as you're tracking your career, is that a metric that really shows success, or is that, even though it's impressive, is it a little superficial? Like, is there something else that you look to, like the types of deals or the quality of deals or the types of clients that you work with? Or is that something that you look at and you go, that really is a statement of success that I'm holding myself to, and next year I want to do 30 million or whatever it is?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that every year's different in how it plays out for the work that we do. But for me, last year was really interesting. That wasn't just a one-off deal for 18 million and then random other stuff.
Yeah.
We really worked hard to put, my heart, coming from the management space a long time ago, my heart is in the creative development and the putting clients in the right position to succeed. So a lot of that 20 million was small deals that added up, game changing in the personal context for a lot of developing artists, songwriters, producers, having their first deals, having, after their first or second deals, finally signing with a major label. So that 20 million represents the success story of probably over 100 clients last year. I think there are some opportunities for bigger deals. I had the honor of doing some more acclaimed producers and songwriters catalog deals last year as well, and that's really interesting process. Less about the money, but just knowing that you're playing a part when you look at the Schedule A of all the songs and they're songs that you kind of grew up on. That's just so cool to be like, you're having an impact in the chain of title of this piece of intellectual property that you like grew up listening to, which is just so cool to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then recently you were just brought on board with Sync Music Group
Yes.
to do their, well, I guess they're getting into the country acquisition
are.
space. So they go, okay, we need an expert who knows the space really
Yeah.
well. And then do they reach out to you, or how's that relationship come
Yeah,
together?
so a lot of clients come to me through mutual referral after being here over 10 years and doing deals with different folks. And so a business affairs or a business management company that I've done some accounting work with recommended me to them. And they're a very interesting company. A couple of their executives were named or nominated on Billboard's Executive of the Year list this year. And they're really motivated and forward thinking about getting into the country space after being in a lot of the Latin space and hip hop space for several years. But it's exciting. They, deals come through various channels, and sometimes they were approached to be a funder or a purchaser of certain assets here, and other times, folks from Nashville will take stuff and they'll find it that way. Sometimes as attorneys, we shop stuff around too. So it's going to be a good relationship. They've done a couple of ventures with another company, Boom Music Publishing here in town, run by a couple of really good, smart entrepreneurs. So we're excited about that.
Do you do anything with you? I mean, you talk a lot about New York and LA. Are any deals happening? LA and Nashville. Are any deals happening out in New York, or do you not really see any deals happening out in New York?
Yeah, New York is less active, I would say. Whenever I was first practicing, I would go to New York as much as I would go to LA. That just my deal flow personally, and just my general senses. New York is a little bit less active in the music scene currently. But everything kind of ebbs and flows. You're still big three are New York, Nashville, and LA. Submarkets like now Miami, Austin, Seattle, Chicago. Those are kind of the four music markets that below the big three. But for my personal book, I'm spending about a third of my book is in LA, so I do quite a bit of business out there.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
When you talk about, you have I guess, handful of clients, like 3 clients that you do management consulting for, all signed to major labels. Is that the kind of thing where they go, hey, Christian, like, we need you in this position. They come after you and you go, okay, let's figure out this works. Or do you go after them? Do you say, hey, like, I did the deal for you, but I really think I could help you in these areas? Like how does someone go from a client to like a management consulting client?
So typically I don't represent clients in the creative space in the management capacity if they're my legal client. What happened in this instance with a couple of them is that I represent the management company, and because I have experience in management prior to practicing law, one company in particular, Truth Management, owned by Missy Gallimore, who's a legendary A&R guru in town. She opened her management company, signed 4 acts. Within 18 months, all 4 were signed to major labels, and it was kind of like an all hands on deck situation. Like, we have 4 major label acts, and we just opened this company who all can help. It's kind of all hands on deck. And so
you were deputized.
I came into that capacity and started doing some management stuff for her acts. But outside of that, in the creative space, I always say more of a creative brain attorney approach. So any value adds that I can give to my clients, I'm not above doing anything. I've carried road gear. I've gone out on the road and did TM stuff.
Who are you going out with? You'll go out and TM a client?
I'll TM a client.
And do you charge your lawyerly hourly rate? Because that probably gets expensive. You're spending days on the road with them.
All included. All included. No,
all included. This is the guy you want to represent you. And you'll go out and like you'll shop deals, or like, so like if someone gets a deal and they'll come to you and you'll say like, hey, I've got a deal from X publishing company. Like, will you say like, hey, like, this is great, super exciting, like, let's shop it around. And they're like, don't sign that deal right away. Let's see. Yeah. Is that how it works?
Well, I don't like to. I love shopping for deals. What I'll typically do is create like a pitch deck for a client and shop it out to folks that I think would be good, a good partner. I don't overshop stuff. I'm very particular about my network and connections, and I try to not just give people a bunch of junk mail spam pitches. If I'm pitching something to you and you're an executive, I think that I genuinely think that my client would be a good fit with you. And so, for example, I have a couple of clients that are unsigned songwriters right now and have some traction on upcoming artist records. And so I'll put together kind of like a brief rundown and send it to my connections at different publishing companies that I think might be a good fit for this individual. Once we have kind of a bona fide offer, or if a publisher come to the table first and it wasn't something that I pitched out, I won't usually take that offer and just like shop it around and be like, hey, this publisher gave me this. What else can we get? I think there's a lot of trust when music industry executives bring stuff to you for your client, and usually would try to get the best deal for the client, with that publisher. But if I'm pitching out, then I'll pitch it to as many folks as possible.
Right.
There are other styles of practicing, of course, this type of law, and it's pretty niche, so everybody has their own flow.
So some people will go shop out, and you think that's bad character to get a deal and be like, let's just milk this around. Let's see, like, let's
Yeah.
because that seems to me like if I got a publishing deal, I would love to do that because A, you're in the driver's seat a little bit, and B, it's like, why not shop it around and see what the best deal is? But that's not really the best thing to do, right?
Well, I think that as an attorney, we have a reputation to uphold as to, those business affairs contacts and relationships that are valuable in the long term. And so it's not, we would never do anything to the detriment of the client, but there's kind of a tiered system, and it's not illegal, it's not unethical, but it is the third one, which is just kind of
Frustrating.
Uncool. It's not cool. And I try to stay out of that not cool, when I'm on the pitch, as much as possible. Now, I'm always also brutally honest with BA folks. If I do plan to shop it around, it won't be in secret. If the offer is not, if it's not a good fit, or if it's not the terms that we were anticipating, I'll just point blank be like, we're really hoping to land this between here, or there seems to be some mutual interest between this client and this other company. We're just gonna let that play out, and if you have thoughts on that, I'm really big proponent of a joint venture situation, meaning two companies, especially in the publishing world, coming together to do one deal.
So that would be like an independent with pretty much always a major, or is it worth doing a JV with a non-major or major?
Sometimes there's two independents, but my favorite is to do JVs with an independent and a major, because you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get the service and attention of an independent, but the backbone of a major, and it's just I've had several deals like that, and I will even put together deals like that. There's a few right now that, we're getting independent offers from majors and independents. I'm like, why don't we just like take a little bit off of what the writer was going to get and bring in two of you guys to do this deal together, so that everyone can win, and get to success faster.
Right. Okay, wait, so going back a little bit, so when you originally started in management, when you were a manager, did you have your law degree, or were you a manager and then you got your law degree?
I did have my law degree. I kind of came to Nashville. My wife says when we were 17, I said, I can't decide if I'm going to work in the music industry or be an attorney. So I kind of came to Nashville with that same mentality, and ran across a few artists that didn't have managers and had always wanted to do it like fresh off the bus in Nashville. And so looked into doing some stuff, and so I had my law degree and kind of had launched my own solo practice and my management company at the same time.
And then when did you go to law school? 10 years ago, give or take?
Yeah, it was 2009. So
wait, so you said how old you were? So you were what, in your like mid to late 20s when you went to law school? And then what were you doing before that, basically? Were you just trying to make it in the music industry and like graduate college and then
doing college and doing I have 2 master's degrees that I did before law school, so I was a professional student there for a minute.
Right. Well, the thing is, like, I've always considered, I don't think I would ever do it, but I've thought about, like, would I ever go to law school? I don't think I would want to become a lawyer, but I do think I would be interested in law school. Like, I think law school would be interesting, but I don't think I would want to become a lawyer. But what, do you feel like you got something out of, like, if you had gone the management route and you ended up not taking the bar, maybe you took the bar, but you didn't become a lawyer, was it still valuable to get that education? Did it change the way you thought about the world, or whatever?
I do think that I also have my MBA, which I did before law school, and from a practical basis, that was the better education process that I utilize on a day-to-day basis in the entertainment industry just from a full spectrum of knowledge and how a lot of things work, whether it comes to accounting, marketing, management, all of those things. The law degree is more niche, obviously, and it's what I make my living at now. But for me, as far as the music industry, it's really a door opener more so than a practical tool for what I'm doing with it. But when you work in the music industry and you are a music attorney, that kind of puts you, it opens doors that a normal person just without that education wouldn't be able to enter. People will listen. It's just a legitimacy thing, I believe.
Right. When you went to law school, was there any doubt about, like, I mean, I feel like because you just so few people actually complete law school and it's so hard, whatever, like, was there any doubt in whether you could do it, or were you set that you were like, I'm going to law school 100%, I'm going to do this is my thing? Or was a part of you like sort of questioning whether you had the ability to follow through and do it?
I've never been personally the type to question, I always think of things and inevitabilities, so it was not really whether or not something was going to happen. That's kind of always been my mentality, and I try to embrace that and teach clients that as well. It's kind of manifest your own success. I'm really big on really just motivation and culture and working hard, and so that's just kind of always been my mentality. So less about it was harder getting a foothold in Nashville than law school. It was more difficult than going to law school and passing the bar, because once you do that, that's like adrenaline rush of several years worth of work, and then you come here and I start sending out emails like, hey, I'm so and so, I just moved to Nashville, I'm interested in becoming an entertainment attorney, and it's like radio silence, because it is such a competitive space, and the music law space is one of the sexier categories of law that you can practice because it's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely competitive because everything in Nashville entertainment's competitive. But I feel like if you go out and you hang around like younger people who just moved to town, it's like number one thing you hear is like, oh, I want to go work at Red Light, or I want to be a songwriter or an artist. I don't think I've ever met someone who's like, I want to be a lawyer, who's not already a lawyer. So, like, is it competitive? Like, if in that scene, were you seeing tons of other young lawyers that moved town that wanted to be lawyers?
I get about one email a day right now from
someone,
law students that want to be entertainment attorneys.
Yeah. And what do you, because someone put us in touch when we first met, when I first moved to town, and you met with me like a couple days later, we were having coffee like around the corner from here. So, like, who will you meet with any of these people, or you really need a classic, like, warm intro in order to meet with someone?
No, I mean, I think that I operate a little differently than most attorneys, really because of my experience when I moved here and all of those unanswered emails, or even emails from what are now prominent attorneys like, it's competitive business, I don't have time to meet with you, best of luck. Like, that's even worse than
But don't you think, because I used to be so pissed off when I would email people and they wouldn't meet with me, I'd be like, come on, you're that busy. And now I get emails too from kids. I'm like, who am I? Like, I can't imagine what you're getting, but who am I? I get emails from college students probably also once a day, every other day, like, without exaggeration. And I turn down most of them. I'll look at their resume, I'll check their LinkedIn. And, like, typically if there's not something there that really connects to me or whatever, I'm like, email someone else, or like, you're just emailing the Rolodex. Like there wasn't a connection here for us to meet. If someone emails me and they're like, hey, like, I want to work in media, I'm a journalism major, like, whatever. I get those emails all the time. I'm like, hey, like, I'll hop on a call or let me or whatever. But I get emails like, I'm a songwriter and, like, I'd love to meet. And if it's I don't know, sometimes I will, but oftentimes I really don't. Yeah. Which maybe I should. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting. It's a time equity thing, and your time's valuable. So I understand that a lot of people don't do it. For me, I just find value in mentorship and connection, and you never know how something's going to shake out. So I'll always give someone some time if they reach out and want to grab a coffee. So a lot of times, I would do lunches or coffees and things like that. Sometimes now I'll just have folks stop by the office and we'll chat and give them a little bit of time. Or hop
That's
on
always a
call.
great move because I don't have an office. But if I
Yeah.
had an office, it's like just come to me.
Yeah.
You can come into my office 20 minutes. I don't have to leave. I don't have to get in my car, and then they feel cool. Like I remember going into people's offices. Went to Espo's office when I first moved to town. I sent him an email. He brought me into his office. I remember that feeling of like, holy shit, I'm in Warner. I'm in Espo's office. It was like, it's cool to go to the office, I think.
Hey, I've been here over 10 years. I still cold reach out to folks in the industry I don't know and say, hey, I've heard a lot about you. We haven't ever done anything together. Would love to, come hang out or grab coffee. And so I'm on the opposite end of that a lot. And I always just try to honor people's interest and see how it shakes out. I mean, that's how we got connected initially. So
that's I remember first time we met, you turned me on to Gary Vee, who at the time was not an obvious turn on. I don't think he was as big as he is now.
Wasn't. He's huge now.
But you were ahead of the trend. You were like,
Yeah.
check out. I forget why you recommend him, but I remember checking him out.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, does everybody know about Gary Vee? And I at the time, I don't think they did.
Yeah.
But now they do.
Now they do. And so the next big thing, what is it?
No, I was going to ask you.
Gary Vee.
Well, I was going to ask you, what's the...
Well, you got to love Tim Ferriss. I'm sure you know all.
Well, I feel like he was Gary Vee before Gary Vee. Don't you think he had his moment?
He's coming back.
Is he doing
now
something?
That he's in the Web3 space.
You're
he's
very into the
back.
Web3 space.
I think it's going to be a game changer.
Still, even the fact that it's dipping
Yeah.
right now, you still think so?
I do.
Yeah.
Reason being, I think the dip is really because stuff was over marketed and people were treating it as speculative
It was the
assets.
dot-com bubble.
Yeah, and so the more practical use of Web3, it's going to take some time to figure out. But even in the music space, just we have the MMA and songwriter rights are good, trending in a better direction as far as the treatment. But once we can have true utilization of blockchain technology for management of rights, it's an irrefutable record that's stamped on the blockchain. And so when we can figure out that, and there's some companies doing that now, it's going to be massive for the music industry as far as record keeping, payment of royalties, things like that. But it may take another 10 years to do, but folks are working on it now.
It's coming that way.
The future is going to be, your average songwriter right now, or producer, or artist, if you ask them what their rights were, they don't know. Their attorneys may know if they can recall it over the hundreds of deals that they've done, but they don't know what they do and don't own, and when they're supposed to get payment and when stuff's going to revert and things like that. But I think the future of Web3 in the music industry is just like on your iPhone when you have your wallet with all your money cards, you're also going to have an intellectual property wallet where you can look and see all the songs, your percentage ownership, when you should expect payment, what your undercooked balances are.
Why wouldn't you have that?
Yeah, when to term notices out, it's all going to be stamped on the blockchain. It's going to be really clean and leave a lot of the ambiguities out. So
yeah,
I know that's in development.
So so you think Tim Ferriss is going to make a comeback? He not a comeback, he never went anywhere, but you think he's going to do something?
He's in Web3. His is more interesting. I think that all the folks that are getting into Web3 will kind of see another uptick. But
Jake Udell, do you know Jake Udell?
No.
Jake Udell is a big manager in LA, and he had this newsletter that he wrote called About a Manager. I think it was called something I would read every day. Everyone read it, like all my friends read it. He was a big manager. I ran into him at a Web3 party 6 months ago. I never met him before. I just went up to him. I said, Jake, like, big fan of the newsletter, like, been reading it for years. Like I said something like, what are you working on right now? Like, any artists? He's like, man, I got out of the music industry. I'm just in Web3 now. He's like, I sold the management company. It's like, I'm not even in it. And I was like, oh, you're probably in it for the wrong reasons, Jake. If you weren't in it anymore. But now he's like all in on Web3. The guy's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And he was like, that was more interesting to me. I got out.
Yeah, I think my fascination is utility with Web3 and crossover integrations between tangible items and Web3. And I think that's kind of the next wave. Even that touches on music, but also other areas as well.
Yeah. I promised our friends here, we've got a little bit of an in-student audience, Lucy and Chris, right? Chris, I said that I was going to put them on the spot and ask them a question, if they had a question for Christian. I don't know if anything came to you guys. And any questions? Lucy wants to be a songwriter. Chris wants to work in the music business. I'm totally putting them on the spot right now. Christian's done more publishing deals than anyone, Lucy. This is your chance right here. How to get a publishing deal, how to get your first job in the music industry. Christian, any advice for someone who's trying to break in?
Absolutely. So, first of all, it's a lot about networking once you're in town and fresh. And I think that that's not always the cold call email, but it's more, you're not going to get to know. I always think of it like it's high school. You don't know the people that were in your high school 10 years before you. You're not friends with them. You're kind of friends with the people that are a little bit ahead of you. If you say you're a sophomore, the seniors, the juniors, some freshmen, and try to build out your core group of folks that you feel like you connect with. And then whenever one of you has success, you will all kind of rise together. And that's happened over and over again. Nashville especially is a very crewy place, I would say. And so you have these pockets of songwriters, artists, producers, executives that kind of all do all the same stuff together. And so I think that finding your own crew that you can support one another when you're starting out, but then kind of all succeed together as time goes on, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, how many careers have been made from like Luke Combs? Like Luke Combs, like all those guys, or Morgan Wallen, like all those guys are now like hit songwriters or artists or whatever. Like Luke Combs blows up, and then Ray Fulcher blows up, and then Luke brings Lainey Wilson on tour with him because they all came out together. And there's like a million others, and then 50 Egg becomes a top publishing company because Luke Combs is involved. Like, how many people are around that?
It's always like that. A group that are friends that, you can't substitute hard work. So, if you're a hard worker and you're a good creative, and then you surround yourself with a crew of good folks that are also hard workers, then you will find common success together, and it's fun. I'm representing a couple of like groups of several songwriters and producers that have been doing this since they could barely put food on the table, and they're coming on success recently, and it's so much fun to watch and watch their enjoyment of finally, after working so hard for so many years, seeing some of that success is nothing better.
Yeah. That's what it is. So basically, you should just be superficial with the people you hang out with. If you think someone's not going to go very far, don't be friends with them.
Well, if you're not, there's a spot for everyone.
Kidding. There's a spot for everyone at the table.
Yeah,
absolutely. Any final thoughts here, Lucy and Chris? Anything?
I have a question.
Yes.
You're up.
So earlier we talked about you were talking about fairness with rights and stuff like that, and being at Belmont and in contract classes, we see a lot of them trying to reiterate the idea of it's a business at the end of the day. So if you don't treat it like a business, you're never going to make it. So do you see a lot of new artists or artists that have a platform? Do you see a issue with their mentality about their rights, or forgetting that there is a label behind it that's putting up a lot of money that they would have got otherwise?
So the question was, because he's not on the microphone, the question was, are there artists that you think maybe don't take the business part seriously enough? And maybe they're focused mostly on just the art, and they don't understand this is a real business. Millions of dollars are getting pumped into these artists. If you're with a major label, if you have a song going to radio, do you think they're taking this seriously enough? That's the question in essence.
Do you see, are you having to almost tell them that's just not doable? Do you see an issue with the way that people are trying to get into record deals, and are you having to go and explain to them that's just not how it works, even though...
How much babysitting is being done here?
It's interesting, and different types of clients are different. I know a lot of creative clients that aren't artists, if they're maybe more in the producer or musician route, they really get beat into them at Belmont or Berkeley, know your value, don't work for less than you're worth, and all of this things like that, which to me, as we talked about previously, I'm of the Gary Vee school of thought. I'm work for free until you have something until you have something. I'm kind of opposite of that, and that's kind of what I did. When I was managing, I met Walker Hayes in Toys R Us, and it was right before he had Pimp and Joy.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you don't even have a website, and he was like, well, I'm going on tomorrow. I'm like, I don't care. You don't owe me anything. I'm
going on to buy Bones. He was going to buy Bones, right? Isn't that what it was? Yeah.
And I was like, I'll just build you a website tonight.
Yeah.
And so, no fee or anything. That's one of the biggest. I worked with him for several years in the management space just by running into him and volunteering my services, to help somebody out. And so I think that that's the more approach. more of the approach that I think is beneficial to aspiring creatives, because once you prove your value, then other folks will want to work with you. But one of the instances where it's really hard when people have expectations that are higher than kind of where they are, and that happens a lot in the reality show space, not just music, but just across the board reality show. If you're somebody that's just plucked out of obscurity and then all of a sudden on a reality show on MTV or one of the big networks, and then you get out of that, it's something about the mindset is so different. Clients will be like, I wrote this, I think that I want Lady Gaga to feature on it. I'm like, I can't do anything with that. Like, the expectations are just so crazy coming off of those roller coaster rides, but warranted, because you're all of a sudden you were at home, and then a few months later you're like on major network TV. So that's really always difficult conversation to have, is what your leverage is and where your place is and what's normal and what's not, and explaining that. And even the music industry is a very complex business, and so dialing it back and explaining what the different rights you have, what the different income streams in the music industry are, what are reasonable goals, and things like that are the conversations that I have with folks in that position.
Boom. Christian, we've said it all. Have we left anything out?
We'll think of something.
What's been
again,
unsaid?
So we'll
bring you back for part 2.
That's right.
Dude,
right.
Thank you for coming into the Chase studio all the way downtown. You made the trip, came all the way in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Been a blast.
Christian Barker, everyone. If someone's like listening to this and they're like, oh my God, I got a publishing deal, I got to connect with Christian, he's got to represent me, what's the best way to get in touch?
You can hit me up wherever, LinkedIn, my email. My law firm is Shackelford Bowen. It's on Music Row in the BMG building. I'm easy to find at Christian Barker on most of the platforms.
Did you ever get that Tupac tattoo?
I don't have the tattoo yet, but I do have a painting in my office of Tupac.
This guy's a big Tupac
90s
fan.
hip hop.
Two tattoos going to come one day, or what's the deal?
It will.
All right, I'm here for it. Let me know.
It's gonna
Let me know what
happen.
you got.
Christian
Barker.
Tattoos.
I'll never get tattoos. I like tattoos on other people. They freak me out on me. The thought of getting a tattoo stresses me out. I can't do it. I can't commit to it.
It's good. If I get a Tupac tattoo, will I get a part 2?
Sure. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Next week.
That's good motivation to get it done. Christian Barker, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Woo.